Welcome to Speech Tea, created by
Lauren Hastings
and Lauren Prather, also known as the Laurens.
This podcast is where we discuss research and clinical practice by sparking conversation within the Black community through social media tea. So,
grab your mug
and take a sip
of Speech Tea.
Hey girl.
Hey.
I'm Lauren Hastings, but I call her LP.
And I'm Lauren Prather, and I call her Lolo.
And welcome to Speech Tea. Yes, yes.
We did that together, y'all. Woo woo.
We getting it.
I can't tell us nothing. Nothing. Oh, I see a coffee and communication shirt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, I'm
so,
just about this.
Wait a minute. Don't you, isn't that a coffee communication shirt too?
It is. Whoop whoop. Black Speech
Shout out to Brittany.
Matter. Shout out to Brittany.
Right.
CC.
LP, what you drinking today?
Well, today, because I am a student, I am drinking this tea from Herbalife that I got, and it boosts your metabolism. So it's like a lemon flavored tea, and it has caffeine in it. So yeah, you understand the rest. School plus caffeine equals late nights and hard work. So that is what I'm drinking on today. Nothing special, just a metabolism. And I think you're really supposed to use it for like working out and exercising. So I guess in a way it benefits me because I'll try to do something tomorrow. I don't know. I'll figure that part out. But yeah, that is what I'm drinking on. Lo, what are you drinking? What tea are you drinking?
I'm back to this peach detox. I'm going to be honest with our audience that my tea game is not that great. So I'm going to go to an actual tea shop and, educate myself on the different type of teas out there.
Yeah.
So I can write one because it's either peach detox or it's green tea. Like
I was about to say, didn't you have like another flavor of that one?
I had skin detox, peach detox, and green tea. That's all I got right now.
If you guys ever want to know about the right detox teas, to hit up Lolo, because I've never had a detox tea. I always feel like it makes you go to the bathroom.
It doesn't. It definitely does some on to your insides, but it's not like I'm running to the bathroom after I'm drinking. Thank goodness. It's not that one. It's a cleanser. It's good to drink at the end of the day when you're eating a lot of junk. And you're just like, you know what? Let me put something good in my system. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Ooh, Lord. It's like what I do to cut the grease, as I call it. I drink Sprite. Like if I eat like pizza or Chinese food, I'd be like, ooh, I need something to cut the grease. So I feel like that's how your tea is.
That's the do it. I like that. Cut the grease. Okay. So LP, what is the social media tea for today? What's going on in social media?
Ooh. Well, there's a lot of things going on, obviously, especially in the climate of what we're in today. But what I really want to talk about was the NBA walkout. I thought this was really powerful in a sense, although in conjunction, let me say this, not although, but in conjunction with the stance that Kaepernick was proving in his kneeling during the national anthem. So pretty much the Milwaukee Bucks, like a handful of basketball players, decided not to play in their playoff game because they felt like it was their responsibility to make a statement to the Black community about how police are treating our people, right? And so this was led by a basketball player named George Hill. And then so in light of this, or the incident that happened before, we've had George Floyd, we're having this Breonna Taylor, but recently we have Jacob Blake, who was shot by police, and he was a Black man who lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and he was shot 7 times in the back by police officers. He didn't die though. However, he's paralyzed from the waist down and he's facing multiple surgeries. The same energy that the Milwaukee Bucks played, Kenny Smith, who is a sports commentator on TNT, he walks off the set in support of the players. So the same energy is like transpiring over. And his exact words were, as a Black man, as a former player, I think it is best for me to support the players and just not be here tonight. And overall, this comes to the conclusion that we are tired. Like, we as a Black community are tired. We're tired. We're tired. And it's just gotten out of control. And I just felt like this was something to talk about, although sometimes our tea is fun, but it's good to address and highlight those issues that really invoke emotion in us, because we face this every day. You know, there's more and more stories coming out. There's more and more documentaries coming out about like our injustices, and you know, right. And so I mean, it goes far back as Emmett Till. You know, like when you're comparing people getting shot and killed by police for minor or minimal things, or things they're not even doing, just because they have their own racial bias against us because of what we look like. You know, it's problematic and it affects us in so many different systems. So I wanted to talk about this and highlight this because this is something that truly has historically affected our communities before Emmett Till, slavery, you know, like us being lynched in the treatment of people, period. So that is the tea for today, although it's more emotional. I mean, that's what's been going on. And so,
well, let me add another layer to that, LP. So I saw a post on Instagram and it said, your Black friends are drained, are emotionally drained. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about Emmett Till and slavery and George Floyd and what happened to Jacob Blake, and then you add on top of that how we move and shake at our jobs because we want to make sure that we don't come off a certain way, that's a lot. So we have what's going on with our community, and then we have to, I don't want to say put on a face, but we have this,
that's what it is.
I mean, it is, you have this, not facade, but this, I want to say facade because I can't think of another word. When you go to your workplace, I remember when I first did the big chop, when I cut my hair off, when I went natural, I was nervous to go to work. Mm-hmm. But I dressed like I normally dress with my shirt, my cardigan, my slacks. I was looking professional, but I was nervous. Mm-hmm. And so when you think about, as a Black person in a predominantly white community, especially those of us who work in healthcare, especially corporate, and you have to carry yourself a certain way every day because you don't want someone to say, oh, so you know, there she go acting Black. Like, you have that in your mind constantly. So to add insult to injury, you got what's going on in our community. We go home and we are drained. Like, I don't even watch the news anymore. I kind of hear it through my aunt. Like, she gives me the cliff notes because the few times I sit for real. Mm-hmm. You remember this LP, when June came and we got hit with all these followers for Mbasla, which is y'all have heard us say Mbasla several times on here, our Black Association for Speech Pathologists and Audiologists. So in June, when the thing with George Floyd hit, we got all these new followers because people were like, oh, I want to learn more about what it is being a Black SOP, or how can I help my Black clients. And you remember this, LP? Both of us, for like 2 weeks, we were so tired, drained, because it was like, okay, we're overwhelmed with all this new support, but at the same time, we're overwhelmed with what now we have the responsibility, because we, you know, are a part of this organization, not only as members but as board members. It's just a lot for our brains to juggle. It just on a daily basis.
It is. And as you talk about the George Floyd, I knew the story, but I didn't watch the video for till like maybe a month or two later. I could not watch the video. And when I did finally watch it, I was like in speechless. Like I didn't, like, I just didn't understand the mentality behind that. And it's like, where is this hate come from? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just really frustrating, like, to be stigmatized and labeled. Like, just think about it. Like, all the labels that Black people have historically, like, I wrote this down, right? And I discussed it with my dad. Slave. So we are labeled, coming to America, we are labeled as slaves, right? So that's property.
Right.
We're animalistic, according to the Birth of a Nation movie. We're monkeys. We're rapists. We're criminals. We're labeled thugs. We're angry. We're ignorant, colored, Negro, nigger, coon, jigaboos, buffoon, slow, uneducated. I mean, these are stigmas. These are negative stigmas and stereotypes that white people have filtrated into our systems. And not only that, our minority peers who think that this is who we are, and it's reflected this way in different areas of I guess society and pop culture, right? And so we have these things, and so now you're seeing and so conversely speaking, now you seeing more and more African Americans, Blacks, whatever you identify with, in terms of title of our race, we are now having to use words to encourage ourselves to know that we are deserving, we are melanated, we are beautiful, we are royalty, we are kings and queens, we are proud, we are strong, intelligent, we're creatives, we're trendsetters, we're heroes and heroines, we're leaders and role models, we're innovators. And we're using these more positive words to flesh out this systemic use of labels on our group of people. And we're just, I mean, it's tiring. And with all the police brutality, the first thing they talk about is what we did wrong and highlight how we're not a good law-abiding citizen. No, you were wrong. Right. Just admit the fact that you were wrong for shooting it, and it was because of your own racial bias, period. You know what I'm saying? So stop doing that to us. We're tired. We're just tired. And, you know, I don't want to get too political in this, but just read between the lines. It doesn't help doesn't help the situation at all, right? And so I just say all that to say we need to keep using these positive words. We need to keep breathing life into the people that we see, our children, whether it's through education, where it's clinical standards, whatever that we're doing that involves us. We have to start at the bottom to re-encourage, because I mean, it's just all filtrated through us internally. That's where like self-esteem, self-image, we're getting all these comparisons, all this stuff happens. So I mean, we could be on this all day long. But
I was actually thinking about another episode that we can do. Really, we can do an episode about what you just said, like the history of how we're viewed and how majority of us in education have imposter syndrome. But that's another episode. It just came to me. So we're gonna stick on.
We're gonna transition the topic for today. But what we're talking about actually flows into what the speech tea of the day is, which is Black communities and disabilities. And this is an area, a topic interest is specifically for Lauren, and I'm not too far away from that. The more and more I read and educate myself about it, and it doesn't and it actually also aligns with dialect in so many different instances. But Lolo, tell us about this.
Listen, last week it was all about you and your AAE, and like you said, this topic is my baby. I could probably talk all day about this. But AAE and Black families, Black communities, and disabilities really go hand in hand. But all in all, it's all about, we don't talk about having a child with disability, let alone raising a child with disability in the Black community. So for our listeners, you know, that I have a mobile private practice on the south side of Atlanta. Out of all of my kids, I only have one who is not Black.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in people's homes. I'm in all Black daycares. I'm going in these households. I'm seeing and hearing
Mm-hmm.
with disabilities. Some of them still can't say the word autism, or some of them still can't say the developmental delay, or if they do, they don't fully understand what that means, especially in the long run, right? And so I wanted to discuss this article by Meyerson. Now, this was done in 1986, y'all. Not 96, not 2006, 1986. They stated,
I was born
right.
then.
They stated in the article that in the white communities, there's one physician to every 540 kids. Now, you might say that's a lot, but you know, if you're just doing wellness checks, you could probably do a lot of kids in your practice. But in the Black community, it's one physician to every 4,100 kids. That's a big, big gap. And man, there's so many ways I can go through this. So when it comes,
teach us. We're here to listen and learn.
Gotta break this down. So let's first let me go this route first. Let's talk about access, because that's what that statistic really comes from. So there's an article by Thomas and Penchansky, and they broke down what the word access means, because that statistic, having one for every 4,000 kids, that means there are not a lot of doctors in our Black communities. That's really what that means.
Yeah.
So when it comes to access, they said it's based off of 5 things, the 5 dimensions: availability. So is a doctor available to see your child? Accessibility. Accommodations, can they accommodate you? Let's say you Hispanic, do they have a translator? Or can it be accommodated? Affordability, can you afford them? Do they accept your insurance? And then acceptability, are they going to be accepting to you and your family and what you bring to the table? And when I read this article and just really dove into those 5 aspects, I'm like, well, I encounter that every day. Like, I am one of 2 SLPs in my area that are mobile, but I take insurances that my friend doesn't. So what does that come with? That's more acceptability. That's probably under acceptability. Then let's say you need a specialist for your child and your insurance doesn't cover it. Well, now we're talking about, can you afford to drive across town, not only pay your copay, but you're probably gonna have another bill once it's said and done, right? We just don't have everything in the Black community. And I'm just talking about healthcare. I'm not gonna even go outside of that, because we could be here all day.
That would be a good podcast. That'd be another episode. School inequity.
But I will make a small comment that you see more Krogers and Walmarts in the Black community than you see Publix. And you know there ain't no Whole Foods in no Black area.
Never seen it. Just seen Dollar Tree.
Oh, it's Dollar Tree, Dollar General,
Big Lots.
Big like all of it. Okay, you the supply store, right? So that leads me to this article that I saw in our Asher Leader. So the Asher Leader is a magazine that our profession sends out really, like once a month, right?
Yeah.
So they had an article in there saying, it was entitled, "Child Exposure to Household Chemicals May Be Tied to Language Delays. Household Cleaners, however, in the Black communities, we have more." Oh, okay. So the article was talking about household cleaners, but in the Black community, let me slow down. I was irritated because it focused on household cleaners, but did not address that in the Black community, we have more warehouses and factories, which gives off more toxins. That's why in the Black community, we struggle with, let's not even talk about Flint, Michigan, because that's a good example. But I felt some type of way. And then I had to tell LP something, and she didn't know this. But in Atlanta, the big trucks, the 18-wheelers, they can't go through downtown. So 20 in Atlanta goes east and west. They have to get off of 285 and go around. Now, again, I said I'm on the south side. I see more 18-wheelers on regular streets on my side of town than I do when I'm on the north side of town.
Is the south side considered Black?
The south side is considered Black. I actually had a coworker who was looking for a house. She was like, yeah, people tell me don't move south of 20. And she was like, where do you live? I was like, south of 20.
Boom.
Awkward.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and you hear about like the south side of Chicago, what's another south side city or metropole? I can't think of another one. But
is Antioch in Nashville? Is that south? Antioch.
That's south east.
Oh, okay.
Because Franklin and Brentwood are south. So Antioch is southeast. But yeah, that's a good example too.
Yeah, there's a lot of Black and brown people in Antioch.
Yeah. So Antioch, y'all, is outside of Nashville.
Sorry, it's in Nashville area. Sorry, Tennessee.
Nashville area.
Nashville,
yeah.
Tennessee area.
Right. And let me tell you what happened to me when I lived in Antioch, and it was okay neighborhood. And then all of a sudden I started to see it change. But what happened was the projects that were downtown, they were tearing them down and giving the people vouchers to move to Antioch. So I lived by myself at the time. So I my neighborhood was pretty quiet. Seems like everybody went to work, did their thing, and then all of a sudden I just started seeing people hanging out. And my guy friends had to start coming over more often just so my neighbors would know that I didn't live by myself. But anyway, that can be a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation.
I have something to say about that, but we're gonna hold off.
But well, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like, because this will lead into another podcast, and I want us to stay on topic of what you're talking about. But we've been programmed to be scared of our own people based off a label. That's true.
And listen, to be transparent, I've been guilty of that, and clearly in that situation. I won't say I was scared. I won't say I was scared. Okay, hold on, let me think about it.
You were more cautious.
I was more because I live by myself. And if you see someone that's just hanging out, I mean, to be honest, even if the person was white, I would be like, I don't like how this person sees me coming and going by myself all the time.
Right. Yeah, safety.
That's a male and female thing.
Yeah.
But someone else could take it a different way.
And I only said that because you said they transitioned from the projects to the area. So it kind of puts that label. But yes, keep going. I'm ready to learn some more. I mean, it's a whole nother conversation, guys. We can go on and on. But
whole nother conversation.
We're back in the congregation. Sorry, no more questions.
So we have the issue of access. We have the issue of exposure to toxins, whether it's household items or environmental. And then one thing that I want to address before I let you jump in too, on this is another article in the Asher Leader, May 2020. And they were talking about the number of students in special education and how it continues to rise. And it said 9.2% of children receive special education services in the school system. 38% have a specific learning disability, meaning that majority of the, let me back up. When a kid has a specific learning disability, they 9 times out of 10 had a developmental delay. And you can only carry the developmental label disability on your IEP till the age of 9. Before you're 9, or by the time you're 9, they have to test you and you'll fall into another category like autism, traumatic brain injury, speech and language. But a lot of those kids end up being specific learning disability. So you can be specific learning disability in reading, specific learning disability in math, but on the front of the IEP, it would just say specific learning disability. Okay. So it said in 2008, over 70% of students graduated with a regular diploma. But one thing I found a discrepancy. The discrepancy was that the article focused on rural areas, not urban areas. And so I kept reading and I'm thinking, okay, maybe they would, address that, right? Never did. And then they made no mention of any cultural groups. Not about African Americans, Hispanics, Latinos, it just nothing. So how can you accurately talk about the number of special education students being on the rise if you don't talk about every single one? And the reason, y'all, I got an issue with this because I know for a fact, and Lauren worked in the school system too, majority of the caseload are minorities. So how are you going to talk about this and not bring it up? So that leads me back to our whole topic of Black families and not wanting their kid to be labeled. And I have come up with a few ideas. I think that the reason why Black people shy away from it or just say, you know what, I'm not even present, because when I was in the school system, a lot of my parents that didn't show up to the IEP meetings were African American. So here's my thing. I think one, being Black is already a label. So that's one. Number two, they don't know what the heck is going on. Or three, it can be the other end where, they had a cousin that was in special ed, or they were in special ed themselves. So they just figured, my kid, the apple don't fall that far from the tree. My kid needs it. So I'm just going to sign it and let the school system do what they do. Right? But I want LP to talk about like the history of special ed, because it's part of the reason why I feel that we have this stigma in our community where it's once you're labeled, you're always labeled. Once you're in, you're always in. Like there's no out of special education. So go ahead and talk about that, LP.
So I was actually told this by a special education teacher that the purpose of special education wasn't to keep kids in this system. It was to help them get to the level of their peers. And of course, there's different severities of disabilities. So different, different, not requirements, but there's different areas that might, shoot, I can't think. Sorry. So there's different areas that affect each child. You know what I'm saying? There's different areas. And so one of the biggest things is that in special education, they should learn in what it was called the least restrictive environment. And this is a part of the Individual Disability Education Act. And this means that I'm getting there. The least restrictive environment means that they should spend as much time as possible with peers who do not receive special education. So ideally, there's this system that we're supposed to help our peers. And I'm talking more in terms of kids that still can be in the classroom with so we label them, I learned them to be my gen ed kids, right? My gen ed kids may need to be pulled out for math, pulled out for science, but they go back with their class for like language arts, reading, and other things, right? And they may have speech or OT. So that's, in terms of this, that's what I'm talking about, not our severe kids who have maybe Downs, or who have autism, or any other more severe disability for their learning system. And so pretty much with that, so special education was supposed to be a chance for them to reach to the level of their peers based on their specific learning disability, right? And so but it has transitioned in so many ways, because it's now, well, it always has been something with money, but now it's really a money count, right? So FTE. So money is always going to be not involved, especially in the schools. Yes, ma'am. What is FTE? Oh Lord, I'm gonna have to look this one up for y'all, because I really never knew what it.
We can just, explain what it is. So in the school system, it happens twice a year, right, LP?
Yeah, it does. It's a number count of how many full-time it's called a full-time equivalent enrollment. It's pretty much counting the hours of how much service time a child gets, so they can get funding within for that school or for that county.
So you can even look up, so you can even look up your district. It might be under the special ed website, but you can, for your state, and you can see how many kids in your district have an autism label, a specific learning disability. You can see the numbers. So we have to count them I think around September, October, and then I think again in like April. And so, and so special ed used to be, we're supposed to help them get back in the classroom. But like LP said, it has now become a moneymaker. So now if it's a moneymaker now, and majority of the kids are minorities. Go ahead.
Right.
Jump right on back in.
Get to. So and mind you, so special education teachers, they go through a training program, they're these things, and then, but we're not seeing growth, right? And so there's so many disconnects, right? So this kid's getting pulled out for speech, he's getting pulled out for stuff. We're not bridging that gap. That's one area problematic. Then you have an overrepresentation of a group, right? And specifically for me, I'm going to say overrepresentation of African American males, right? So now all these teachers are getting overloaded with students on their caseload. You're having to do this, then you got to prepare them to take these standardized testing. We don't know if these teachers are really qualified, because sometimes they're paraprofessionals helping these kids too that are doing the teaching as the pullout. So what kind of structural system are we putting in place, right? So ideally, it's kind of going back to the intent versus impact. We're not seeing what the ultimate goal is because of this misrepresentation. Now, I want to kind of take it further. I read from, her name is Shalonda, let me get her name right, Shalonda Bush Daniels, and she did her dissertation, is what I'm reading about this. And she says another factor that contributes to the overrepresentation of African American males in special education is teachers' perceptions, attitudes, and reactions to their behavior. So these parents who are saying no, can you see why? And she did this based on a study that she read, and we'll put this in the show notes. But the study talked about how teachers perceive African American males. So according to this study, many teachers view African American males as being aggressive, back to the labels, right? And are being pegged as learning disabled solely based on their environmental styles. So we're not finding out what's wrong with our kids what's wrong, what's wrong with you? Why are you having a bad day? Did you not eat last night? Did you not? We're just judging because, oh, they're acting out in class. We're not trying to find out the root of why they may have this emotional thing. So now they're being pegged as learning disabled because they're not listening to Miss Susie read a story in class. So she also said that she honestly believes that overrepresentation in males in special education is linked to low attendance rate of in areas of higher education, as well as high attendance rate of African American males that are currently incarcerated, which leads to the school prison to
Wait, I gotta tap me in. I gotta slide something in there. I gotta slide something in.
Tap you in.
Before right now, before you even go to that prison pipeline, we gotta talk about, girl. Let me tell you. Look, we've been so excited about this episode for about 3 weeks, okay? Woo! But we have to talk about adverse childhood experiences before you even get to that, right?
Right.
So adverse childhood experiences are traumatic events occurring before the age of 18. ACEs is what they call it for short, include all types of abuse and neglect, as well as parental mental illness, substance abuse, divorce, incarceration, and domestic violence. So back to LP's point about African American males in school. I have a client right now. He has a diagnosis of ADHD and ODD. ODD is oppositional defiant disorder. Okay. Now, his situation falls right in line with ACEs. His father, I found out recently, was incarcerated. His mom is now with someone else, and has a baby. And then also, I've been in the home where his mom and his stepdad have been arguing using choice words. He's more independent. I mean, he doesn't function as a child in that house. Let me just say that he does not function as a child in that house. And so when I think about him and how they treated him at school, does he really, is he, now the ADHD, I question, because after I established rapport with him, he didn't try me. Let me tell you, when I say he didn't try me, he wasn't being defiant toward me. Now, when we first started, he tried it. But once he realized how consistent I was and how I was there to help him, because he has a severe articulation impairment, and then also he struggles with reading, which that's another episode on another day. But because that's a link between severe articulation and a reading disability. But he's experiencing all that. So if he's not seeing a happy home and he's going to school, on top of he already only knew a handful of sight words, and he's in first grade, and in first grade you should at least know 100 walking in the door. And then his teacher started throwing him out, or he started acting out, kicking, spitting and stuff, suspended from school. So what do you have, LP? You have loss of instruction. Yep. And we're seeing this trend, like you said, with our African American males. So if in our communities they do experience or see a lot of domestic violence or incarceration in their neighborhood or substance abuse around them, whether it's in their home or in their neighborhood, they're still exposed to it. So when they go to school, are they really thinking about school, or are they thinking about what they are going back home to?
Right. It's about.
Go ahead. I had to throw that in before you hit that prison pipeline.
That was good. So
let me sip some tea on that one.
So school to prison pipeline, if you don't know what that is, it is a term used to describe how kids get pushed out the public schools and pushed out into the juvenile and criminal justice system. They're pretty much, it's a school. Some schools have these zero tolerance policies that are really harsh, that leads to suspensions and expulsions, and even in-school arrest. Whew. Okay, y'all.
Take it back.
This is not. This does not only affect males. We have females too, because that's another Another area to talk about, right? So this mostly affects our Black and brown children. And yes, I'm pulling in our brown ones because y'all with us on this, right? And so our children are getting punished for minor incidents. Like there was a video that I watched that said somebody in Missouri, a kid that was 7 years old, got, I guess, an in-school arrest because he was crying. What? Crying? Then we get in trouble for dress codes, doodling on a desk, taking candy off a teacher's desk, right? And which all this stuff basically starts at the preschool level. There's no discrimination on the age group, right? And they're doing adolescent things, and they're getting these harsh, severe punishments that put them out of school. What happens when you get put out of school?
Loss of instruction.
Loss of instruction, bad grades, you're getting held back. So of course these parents are like, hell no, excuse my French, I'm not putting my kids in special education. And you know what I'm saying? And so ideal in these minds of these punishments, harsher punishments are given to Black and brown students versus their white peers. That's problematic. That is also systemic. Hello.
But to add to the systemic, LP, what you're saying, which I want to make sure we make this point very clear. Discipline has changed in the school system from when we were growing up. It was more or less you go to the principal's office and the vice principal handle the discipline, but now they are outsourcing, especially in high schools. I don't know about middle schools, but especially in high schools now, they are outsourcing these. So they're not security officers with this little, flashlight. Okay,
they're not.
These are like almost, I don't want to call, they might be a little bit higher than mall cops, but they up there with real cops almost. Because because I remember working at a high school, and I saw these people walking around. I was like, is the police here? And they had, I forgot, it said something enforcement. So they're now training our kids in high school. You mess up in class, you getting cuffs on. So they starting in. I don't know if they in middle school, but at least on the high school, I know for sure you don't go to the principal's office. The principal don't handle you. No. It's like a legit officer.
It is. And that's what goes back to these in-school arrests, right? And so all of this is going down. So I read this thing on, it's called themomsrising.org. And they talk about the facts about suspensions and exclusionary school discipline policies of youth incarceration. And they list like 4 points. So the first point is children of color and children with disabilities are disproportionately suspended. Number 2, of children of color with disabilities, more than 1 in 4 boys and nearly 1 in 5 girls of color receive an out-of-school suspension. Number 3, the most significant indicator which a children will be suspended is not the type of offense, but the color of their skin, their special education status, ding, 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 and what school they go to and whether they have been suspended before. Number 4, 1.6 million K through 12th grade students attended a school that employed a law enforcement officer, but no counselor. Why do you think our parents do not want our children labeled? We talked about in the beginning how we've always been a label since we've been brought over here to these great United States of America. It's a problem. It's systemic.
It's a problem. And back to the kid that I had as an example, one of my personal clients, I finally told the mom, LP, I said, you need to ask the teacher, when is this happening? The only thing I miss about working in the school system was educating teachers, because a lot of teachers don't know what we do. And a lot of teachers don't know, I don't care what color you are, they don't know how to dissect behavior, right? Just like when I see a little toddler having a tantrum and I don't hear words, I like, ding, 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 they might need speech therapy because they don't have words. Same thing happens when I see a kid acting out in class. I'm like, you need to track it. But a lot of these teachers, same thing with my kid, she would just say, oh, he kicked somebody. Oh, he spit on somebody. And I kept telling mom, I said, ask the teacher to write down when it happened. Finally, this kid, they ended up moving and he went to a new school, and I opened up his planner because I'm gangster like that. I check
That's
planners.
what we're supposed to do.
I check it because just all this stuff we're saying, I already know. So I tell my parents of my black boys, I'm like, I just want to let you know, I'm gonna push him. I have no chill. Don't get it twisted. I love on them,
Right.
but I am like,
right.
we gonna get this done. So anyway, I was looking at his folder, and the teacher, I was so excited. She said, after recess, he had a hard time. Thank you. Please track what he's doing,
Right.
because we already know he's struggling in reading.
Right.
So tracking it, I don't even care if you write it on your hand or you walking around with some Post-it. If you track it, I'm telling y'all, I don't know if this is for somebody's little nephew or niece or anybody. Track, make the teacher, ask the teacher, when is it happening? Because 9 times out of 10, it's probably happening at the same time. Just like kids know when they don't feel good, kids know when they don't know. So if me and LP were in a physics class right now, we would probably be texting and writing each other notes, because physics is all over our head, right?
That's another story, guys, because that's very much true. I barely survived that class.
Right. But what I'm saying is, as adults, we know, okay, we just gonna text, or we just gonna write on our notebook, notebook or paper or whatever. Kids don't have that skill yet.
Yeah.
So what are they gonna do?
They're gonna
act out.
They gonna.
But when it comes,
I was gonna say they're gonna mess with their friend. They're gonna talk. They're gonna distract somebody else. Yeah, I mean, because they're having difficulty in that subject area.
And there's so many layers to this. So you have the ACEs, right? You have the ACEs, and then you have teachers who have this negative perception of you, right? And then you have these law enforcement people at your school.
And some schools have metal detectors.
Yeah, and why do people wonder there are a lot of Black people in prison? Like, we're setting this up early. Like you said, we need more counselors and social workers. Like, when the kid is acting up, get them calm and send them to counseling.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the brain, they don't have what we have as adults to say, hey, I need to journal. Hey, I need some me time. Hey, I need some self-care time. Hey, I need to go sit on somebody's couch because I got some childhood stuff I need to heal from. They don't have that. So what else can they do?
And we're not saying that all teachers do this. We know that some teachers are very enlightened in this area. We know that they're very knowledgeable. And don't get us wrong, we're not coming down on anybody. We're just frustrated with the system because there are a lot more people who don't care than do care, is what I'm finding out. And, you know, even to those paraprofessionals who are working with your children, sometimes y'all have to get settled through the behaviors before you can get to the learning, and that can affect too. And this is not only just for y'all, but for us too. Like, we can't I mean, mind you, our time is a lot less than you all's with them pulling out. I mean, 30 minutes, by the time we remediate behavior, we're almost ready to go walk them back to class or tell them to go back to class to get the next group of kids. So we understand your frustration, but we have to work together as a team, and that's what we're trying to emphasize. And a team also includes parents, and making them aware. Sometimes the parents don't know, especially when it's about, I gotta make sure my kids are eating, I gotta make sure there's a roof over their head. This is about survival. And a lot of times, especially in a white dominated,
is at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, they're not thinking about that. And that's what we want to tell also our white peers. Stop prejudging our families because of from where they come from, but understand why they may not show up. It's not because they don't care. It's because they can't just leave work all the time.
Access.
They can't do that. They can't just say, well, okay, excuse me, my son has They don't know. You don't know what type
I
of
had to be gone for I think 4 hours and be
right.
right back.
And it looks so different. Like these parents do
Yeah.
care, but they care more about providing and survival for their
Shelter.
kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're concerned with. Education is like, I want to care too, and they do. I think they really do care about where their children stand in education level, but their main priority is providing, especially if you're a single parent, if you're a guardian of older age, if you're young, like there's levels and layers to this, and that's what we want to talk about. But I know ultimately Lolo wants y'all to understand that when your child is being looked at to be evaluated, ask the questions that you want to ask.
Be present.
If kind of see if you're seeing some of the same things at home, because it's not always a negative thing. It's not a bad thing to be evaluated. It just comes to terms with, do you understand what is going on, the processes, and why? That's why she said things like, there's behaviors involved. When are they happening? So this comes to accountability, not only for the teacher to really document this in terms of highlighting where they do have struggles, because sometimes we do have challenges. I mean, there's subject areas that we just don't know. Like Lauren said, we may be struggling in physics and I need a tutor. Like we don't have always the extra access for after school care, for that extra tutor that can come in the home to help in those difficult areas that our white peers have access to. Or not even that, like if you compare it to socioeconomic status that maybe a middle class family versus a lower class family has. So I mean, it's just so many, and we're passionate because we don't want that stigma of school to prison pipeline. Like Lolo said, she had a client, and one of my really close friends, the first thing she heard in preschool with her kid, with my godson actually, was when they needed to evaluate him for speech and language because he was having some language difficulties, was like, no, I don't want my kid to go. That's sparking the school to prison pipeline. That was her first fear. And so we understand where you're coming from. And I had to break it down. And I did my own like informal assessment to see, and I'm like, it's okay. But because we value early interventions, the earlier we get it, the more we can, the easier the transition is to remove that status. So I just, it's powerful.
This is a deep subject, but I want to kind of bring this together. So what I really want, and I'm going to start with each entity. I really want my Black parents to know it's okay. It's okay. But you need to dive in head first. Go to those meetings. If it's too emotional, take someone with you. They don't tell you this, but you can bring somebody with you. Bring a friend. I wouldn't necessarily suggest a relative because they might get emotional too. So bring someone would speak for you in the event that you hear all this negative stuff and you're going to cry because it's overwhelming. In IUPs, I will tell you, you're going to hear more negative stuff than you're going to hear positive stuff. And it can be a lot for a parent to hear. Number 3, take advantage of resources. If there's some type of organization or brother-sister thing or something after school, at the school, that's going to offer tutoring or something like that, take advantage of it, because I get it. It's hard. We have this access, issue in our community, but there are also other Black organizations, especially sororities and fraternities, that give back to their communities. So get on Instagram, find a hashtag, I don't know, kid help or after school, I don't know, but I can tell you right now, Instagram is like my new Google. I just play around with hashtags, and I'm for real. And I find these different, businesses. To my special education colleagues, like LP said earlier, I won't say don't, that's a strong word. Try not to have a perception of minorities, because this also affects Hispanics as well, and Asians and Middle Eastern, all of that, especially Caribbean.
That's another
You're right, especially families from the Caribbean, but that's a whole nother other podcast. But try to try to learn their culture, learn their family makeup. It's easier for me because I go in the home, but when I was in the school system, you just had to ask. And sometimes they will tell you, hey, it's just me at home, or hey, it's just me and my mom is trying to help out here and there. Listen to them when they say that, because they're letting you know how available or not they are to really help their child. So that will be a ding, 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 good opportunity for you to say, you know what? Have you thought about getting speech or OT or PT services outside of school? See, the school system don't tell you about that.
We're actually not supposed to.
Oh, well, see, I've been out the game for a long time, but since the school system ain't supposed to tell you, ask your doctor. I'm serious. Ask your doctor. What are some other things I can get my kid help outside of school? And then to my fellow SLPs, whether Black or white, because sometimes we as Black people, we can judge our own. Kind of the same thing, but we have to be advocates, because communication, especially specific language disorders, it has an impact for a long time. I'm just going to be straight up. It's going to affect that child for a long time if they are not given the proper resources. So we have to advocate for them and say, listen, let's look at the whole child. I tell people all the time, I'm a whole therapist. You have to look at the whole child. So when you're getting that information from that parent, don't just skim that intake form. You need to see if the dad is in the home. You need to see who they live with, because that's going to impact them. And talk to a counselor. We got these counselors and we don't use them in the school system.
Right.
We just don't. So the speech tea of the day, labels don't
wait,
define.
before you get to that, let me go back to that statement. We're not about referring to outside sources. So we're not, I want to make a disclaimer, we're not encouraged, especially if you're like affiliated with an outside company, if you work 2 areas. But if the parents ask, you can provide ideal places to go for services. That's better, because I don't want to say they don't. I mean, that's too blatant. But we're encouraged, not encouraged to, I guess, put that out there so much. I don't know. That's what I understood.
Right. So you have to say encourage, because if you say recommend, the school system has to pay for it. So the school system has to watch their wording.
Yeah, there we go.
That's what a school psychologist told me. So thank you for reminding me about that little.
Encourage.
This is a heavy topic.
It is. It's deep.
We can be on here forever, but I think we gave you guys a lot of information. So the speech tea of the day is just, labels don't define you, your purpose or your destiny. They don't. We have to just find out what's wrong, make a plan to get help, and use your resources. Use your resources. So leave us a comment, like, share.
Yes.
What do we subscribe?
Review. We thank y'all. Oh, this is the episode where we can announce we have over 100 downloads. So we appreciate you guys so much. That means a lot.
It does. And like we said, this episode was heavy, so we welcome any comment and we'll definitely address it because this is something we don't talk about.
No. Yeah. Yep.
But thanks for joining us for some tea.
Bye, Lolo.
Bye, LB.